With the recent Kickstarter for Death Battle's new independent era coming to a close the day I'm recording this, I figured now would be the best time to talk about the matchups we have been blessed with. And just to briefly touch on the waiting period, it wasn't fun. I've made it no secret that this show on Community means the world to me, so seeing it get placed in a state of limbo was really worrying. But that's all in the past now, as we have a bright future ahead of us with 12 confirmed matchups to talk about. Although it technically isn't part of the Kickstarter, I'd feel bad not mentioning Tom vs. Wile E. I'll be honest and say that I was always a bit miffed as to why it wasn't Tom vs. Sylvester, but after making my trailer for it, I completely get it, and I'm super hyped for it. Plus, this would be my personal prediction for Luis's hand-drawn animation he's confirmed to be doing. It may be a pretty safe prediction, but I don't see this working that well in sprites. Regardless, it should be a banger. Moving on to our first of our Kickstarter matchups, Omni-Man vs. Bardock. What a smart choice to draw people in. Dragon Ball and Invincible equals easy money, nobody's gonna deny that. And surprisingly, I haven't seen many people upset that Nolan's returning this soon. I think we all agree he needed a challenge, and a rundown that actually goes into spoiler territory. Bardock also offers us a look at Dragon Ball from a different angle, one without universal scaling, something we're long overdue for. The animation preview looks good, but Nolan's model looks really off? It's probably just me. I'm sure Devil will cook as per usual. Speaking of cooking, holy crap, Bowser vs. Eggman. Yeah, this was my fourth most wanted and my childhood schoolyard debate matchup. When I saw this, I actually had to muffle a scream due to sheer joy. Plus, it's a full-on army battle and they're apparently giving them everything? Yeah, I don't even care about the close debates and who wins. I'm just grateful for Moro and everyone else working on this, and my god does it look great. My big issue is that I'm setting my expectations very high, because now that we're getting an army battle, I don't know if its full potential will be realised, especially since this is Moro's first solo animation for the show. But if I'm proven wrong, then I will not complain. Also, drop this on October 27th for my birthday, please and thank you. Okay, next up... Light vs. Columbo. Yeah, I know this is technically a bonus episode, but it doesn't help my levels of disappointment get any lower. I made it clear in my top 100 that I really like Light vs. Walter, and yes, I have seen Breaking Bad Biff, so this bummed me out a little. I'm sure Liam will make this something special, but I, like a lot of people I know, just couldn't care less. Sorry. Up next we have Kratos vs. Asura? The hell? Yeah, this surprised me too. I question why we're getting this before Tom vs. Wile E, but I'm not complaining, which may come as a shock to some of you as Kratos vs. Dante is in my top 20, and Asura vs. Atrocitus is my second most wanted, but I'm man enough to acknowledge that this gained more popularity than both of them, so it does deserve its place, and whilst I don't think it'll be nearly as interesting as either of those two, I'm excited to see Devil cook with the animation, and the preview leaves me hopeful they'll go into both of their characters. The thing I am not looking forward to, however, is the backlash after Kratos wins. Because yes, he does win, but that ain't gonna stop people from moaning. It's really not that hard to be calm and reasonable, guys. Up next we have Shigaraki vs. Mahito. Well, this certainly exists. A fine matchup that I know DJ will pour love into. I just haven't checked out both franchises yet, but this will probably be my incentive to. All I know is that it focuses a lot on body horror, which could be a good stepping stone into Freddy vs. Pennywise next October, hopefully anyways. I'm optimistic about this one, nothing more to say. Oh boy, it's time to talk about Aang vs. Traveler. Now yes, Poe vs. Aang was on my top 100, and I am still upset it's not going to happen, but I can admit both it and Aang vs. Link aren't fair if you use the shows for Poe. As much as I think both of those would make for a more interesting dynamic, Traveler offers a better debate and introduces Genshin to the show, plus both of their elements bouncing off each other could be very fun. Although I hear Traveler's story isn't finished yet, so I'm questioning why Illidan vs. Zhao wasn't selected instead, as this feels like a weird choice to try and get people to donate, especially since, as mentioned before, Aang had more popular options, but DJ is goated and he will make something nice out of this, right? I mean, anything's an upgrade after Aang vs. Edible Derrick, right? Episode 200 is up next with Ash vs. Yugi. A weird choice for 200, but I'm excited nonetheless. My Yu-Gi-Oh! Whatever. My experience on that franchise is non-existent, so I can only speak for Ash. I grew up with the Gen 1 to 5 animes, but the idea of seeing Charizard, Crocodile, Infernape, and the Goat Sceptile potentially making it in makes me very excited. I honestly think this will become one of the best episodes of the entire series if done right, and I can't wait. Banger after another, we have Kyle vs. Simone the Digger next. another favourite of mine. Listen, we all know why this matchup is good and what we want to see from it. The debate's good, and we finally get another Lantern episode. I'm one of the only people rooting for Kyle since I grew up reading a lot of the Lantern comics, with Blackest Night and Brightest Day being some of my favourites. And whilst I do like Gurren Lagann, I'm still hoping and betting that Kyle takes it. The visuals alone have a lot riding on them to be as grand as Galactus vs Unicron, which I'm sure they'll be able to pull off, and I can't wait. Since I don't have anywhere else to bring this up, I think that Punisher vs Dredd will be our live action episode, since Ismahawk not using a comic book character would be a bit off. And hey, at least it's a popular request, and it's not Marvel vs DC. I never thought this day would come, but we're finally getting Ruby vs Maka, and it isn't episode 200. That's a bit weird. Regardless, this is my pick for Torian's return episode. I mean, it just makes sense, right? He'll know how to honor Monty's legacy, and that's all that matters really. I have zero care for this on its own, but so many people do, and I'm happy for them. I'm just gonna say it, I really like Hulk vs Godzilla. Yes, I know the popular YouTuber you really like doesn't like it, and yes, I know you can't form your own opinions, but for me, this idea slaps. It's thematic, it's a neat debate, and it introduces a size dynamic that we really haven't seen before, which I do understand why that would throw people off, but for me, that's what makes it so interesting. It's really experimental, but I have faith the crew will cook, and so should you. Also, my boy Holden got his most wanted, and that's pretty neat. And finally, Gru vs Megamind. Although we didn't reach the goal for it, it's still gonna happen now at least. And like with Kyle vs Simone, this is another one I have high on my most wanted list that I don't really have much to add to. You already know why it's good, and why it should happen. The debate, the music, banter, the minion fight, and just getting both of these characters on the show in general. It's a shame we have to wait 2 years for it, but I'm sure it'll be well worth the wait. Now, the main section I wanted to get to was the rematch option. Of the three we were presented with, none of them seemed too worth it in my opinion. Yang vs Tifa would just feel like correcting a mistake and nothing more. Ben vs Hal is a no-no. And Doom vs Chief, whilst popular, both have better options, and to me it ultimately just feels like Doomslayer featuring Master Chief, as hard as an animation would go, I'm sure. My vote is of course going to Mewtwo vs Shadow. Now yes, this would be Shadow's 4th episode, but everyone likes Shadow, so who the hell cares? It would ultimately be replacing the original rather than adding to it. So I count this as Shadow's 3rd episode if anything, and I'm sure I don't need to go into why the original is as loathed as it is at this point. So why should you care about this getting its time to shine? Well, for one, despite how popular Shadow is, none of his 3 episodes are fan favourites, and that just doesn't sit well with me. His first episode was season 1, his second was just awful, and his third was a 7 out of 10 at best. Not a great track record. Plus, with all the new media, powers, and scaling both have to draw from, bringing both of them back would be more than justified. I also noticed recently Brandon expressing dissatisfaction with the original score, so why not let him redeem himself here? But perhaps the real meat and bones here, besides the close debates and the legacy of the matchup, is the dynamic. Specifically the ending. As I'm sure you know by now, the main connection between the two is their memory loss in relation to a girl from their creation who died, causing their villain arcs. Of course, there's a lot more to it than that, but you get the idea. For this fight, I like the idea of using a pre-movie Mewtwo, where he's still the villain. This way, you can have Shadow inspire hope into Mewtwo before the final clash, and assuming Mewtwo loses, he falls to his death, using Shadow's memories of Maria to remember Amber, and realize just how precious the gift of life is, just like in the movie. And you can have Shadow close his fallen foe's eyes. A big problem with Shadow vs Ryuko was them just focus on how quote-unquote edgy he is, which isn't really a character trait nowadays. I'm sure I could have worded this a lot better, but hopefully I got my point across that this fight could be something really special. Something both of these two deserve and won't get in any of their other matchups. And that's the video. I'm sure I could have gone a lot more into detail about some of these matchups, but I didn't want to waste your time and would rather do that during my individual reviews of all these episodes, which is something I plan on doing, as well as individual season rankings. So I hope you all look forward to that. That being said, stay safe, and as always, be excellent to each other.